Welcome to CG Simplified, and in this video we'll be modelling and texturing a simple glass ball. Let's get started. In a new file, we'll press Shift and A to bring up the Add menu, then navigate to Mesh and add a cylinder. This will be the base of our ball. A pop-up menu will appear in the bottom left. Here we can alter the amount of vertices as well as the depth and radius of the cylinder. As this is a simple model, we want to keep the number of faces low, so set the vertices to a low number like 12. Be sure to remember what this number was, as when we add a bottle cap, we'll be using the same number. As for the size options, we're trying to model a 330ml ball, so setting the height to 0.23 meters and the radius to 0.025 should be perfect. Now we can start shaping the bottle. To make life easier, we can lift the bottle to align it with the XY axis by selecting the bottle in object mode and pressing G to grab. If we then press Z, we can isolate movement to the Z axis. Once online, press left click to confirm. In front orthographic view, we can see our grid. Each square represents a set distance from 1mm to 1 meter. With our current level of zoom, each square represents 1 centimeter. If you want to double check, there should be 23 squares as we set the height to 23 centimeters. Now pressing tab to enter edit mode, we can add the first loop with Ctrl+R and move it to the 12 centimeter mark. We'll add another loop cut above this and move it to the 14 centimeter mark. Now we can thin the neck of the bottle by pressing 3 to switch to face select mode. Now alt click the top loop of faces. We want to scale the neck down to be about 2.5 centimeters. The best way to scale this is by pressing Alt and S. This will scale to the center of the selected loop. As the top and bottom faces aren't selected, the neck won't scale along the Z axis. You can press Shift to be more precise with our inputs. Now to further refine the shape, we want to add another loop between the previous two we added. Keep it roughly in the middle and scale it to smooth off the curve. Add another loop cut on the main part of the bottle, then we'll press Ctrl+B to bevel this loop. This way we can quickly create two loop cuts and adjust the distance at once instead of individually. Use Shift and Alt to select both of these new loops and then bevel again. This time keep the bevel distance low. We're adding this bevel so we can thin out the middle part of the bottle where the label would be. Now to add detail to the top of the bottle so we can easily add a cap. Add a loop cut and keep it 2 centimeters from the top, then add another about 2mm above. Press S to scale it out, then bevel this new loop smooth. We'll add and bevel another loop a few millimeters from the top, and then scale down the lower of the two. Add and scale up another loop cut in the top of the bottle. This will round off where the bottle cap will sit. Now we'll refine the shape of the neck and rename the cylinder by pressing F2 to rename. Going to the underside of the bottle, we can begin cleaning up the shape. Select the bottom loop and bevel to help keep the edge sharp when we add a subdivision modifier. Now in face select mode, select the underside face and press I to inset a new face. Do this again and then select and lift the newly created face. Again, we're going to bevel these two edge loops to help keep the shape once we subdivide. Select and delete the final face, then press Ctrl+F and select grid fill. This will add a clean quad mesh to the underside of our bottle. Going to the top of the model, we want to delete the top face. Now in the modifiers tab, we want to add a solidify modifier. Change the thickness to about 0.003, then apply the modifier. Tabbing into edit mode, we can now clean up the extra edge loops on the inside of the model. It's worth checking the bottom of the bottle to make sure there's no iffy geometry. Now add a loop at the top to round off the edge. With the bottle finished, we can add a subdivision modifier and adjust any edges that might have lost their shape. Finally, shade smooth. With the bottle complete, we can move on to the bottle cap. First, we'll add a circle. Like the bottle, the circle wants to have 12 vertices, and then we'll set the scale to 0.0125. We'll adjust the scale better manually. Select the edge loop and press E to extrude the loop, creating a new series of faces that will make up the wall of the bottle cap. Scale this down so we have a slight slant to the cap. Now select the top loop and press F to add a face. Now select the loop of faces around the edge of the cap, then right click and subdivide. This will also add a loop around the center of the faces. Select this loop and dissolve with Ctrl+X. Select every other edge and scale in. Pressing Shift Z will prevent scaling on the Z axis. This also works for the X and Y axis. Now select and bevel all vertical edges. Inset the top face slightly, taking care not to cross the vertices, then delete the face and grid fill. Pressing O, we can turn on proportional editing. scroll up with the mouse scroll wheel to make the area of effect smaller. If we look in the proportional editing drop down menu, we can select the type of interpolation we would like. In this case, I'll use sphere. With the centre vertices selected, we can move them upwards to give a slight curve to the bottle cap. Once again, we can add and apply a solidify modifier, then bevel any edges we need to keep sharp. Looking at the inside of the bottle cap, we can remove any unnecessary edges. We'll add an extra loop on the outside wall of the bottle cap to help support the edge, then another loop to give it a little extra shape. Now add a subdivision modifier in shade smooth. Now we want to UV unwrap both models for texturing. UV unwrapping is the process of taking a 3D model and laying it out on a 2D image. Alt select loops where you want to make a cut, and then press U to bring up the UV unwrapping menu, and then select mark seam. We want to essentially cut off the outside and inside base of the bottle, and then add another cut around the hole, and then make sure we have a vertical cut so we can open the bottle up. We'll repeat roughly the same process for the bottle cap. Press A to select all vertices, and then press U and select Unwrap. Now we've finished, we can begin texturing. Switching over into the Shading tab, we can see a preview of our model with some simulated lighting. Underneath this window is a shader editor. Selecting the bottle, we'll go ahead and add a new material and name it glass. Now, the BSDF we have here won't work for a glass texture without a lot of work, so we'll delete this and then press Shift A to add a new node. In search, type glass. This will give us the glass BSDF. Now plug the BSDF into the surface of the material output. We can tweak the colour if need be. For the sake of a better preview, I'll be switching to render view mode and adding HDRI for better lighting as well as adding a background. If you have a slower computer, you may be better leaving it as it is until we're done. To make the glass look better, we can add a procedural texture that gives the glass some life. Pressing Shift and A to bring up the add menu, type in noise, then select the noise texture. I also want to add mapping and coordinate nodes that will be plugged into the noise texture node. To preview the result, plug the factor into the surface of the material output. There's no set rule for how to set up the scratches in detail. Personally, I like to tweak the scale on the mapping node and most of the settings on the noise texture until I get something that feels right. You can copy these settings. Once we've set up the scratches, we want to set up a second noise texture that will be used to further randomize these scratches. Add the same 3 nodes again, only this time on the texture coordinate, plug the object into the mapping vector. This will change how the noise texture is calculated on the bottle. Again, I'm going to tweak these settings until I have something that feels right. Once we have both set up as we'd like, we can add a math node and set it to subtract. Now when we plug our noise textures into this subtract node, it will essentially change the distribution of the scratches. We'll add a bump node, which will change the black and white texture we have created into a height map, which we can plug into the normal on the glass BSDF. Make sure you put the output value on the subtract node into the height on the bump node. Plug the BSDF into the surface on the material output, and our glass will have texture. Reducing the strength settings on the bump node will make the new details much finer. Now we can start on the bottle cap. Add a new material and name it metal. This time we can keep the principal BSDF and change the colour of the bottle cap with the base colour option. We want this texture to be metal, so we can increase the metallic value to 1. We can adjust the roughness value to control how shiny or dull the bottle cap is. To easily copy over the scratches onto this new material, click on the bottle and view the material, then box select the node tree we have set up and press Ctrl+C to copy the nodes. Reselecting the bottle cap, we can paste the node tree into this material with Ctrl+V. Add another bump node and plug everything in. We can also apply this to the roughness value, and in a brightness contrast node, we can adjust how shiny the bottle cap is. Now we have a finished glass bottle. I hope this video helped you learn a few things, and if you have any questions or requests, drop them down in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.